I want you to picture your current boundary practice, however new, however shaky, and however much you're still figuring it out, as a home that you're building, right? Think about it as a home that you're building. Maybe it's a small home right now. Maybe it has a few rooms, a boundary around your time, maybe a boundary around who gets access to your emotional energy, a boundary around what you will and will not explain yourself to anyone anymore, right? Now here's the invitation. Don't leave your younger self standing outside that home. Don't make her wait on the porch while you are enjoying the warmth alone, silently ashamed that she is the reason it took so long to get it built. Bring her inside. Let her sit in your table. Let her be in that house too. This matters because many of us treat your growth as a kind of divorce from our past selves. We talk about who we used to be, as if the person is someone we've outgrown and would rather not be associated with. But that person built the foundation you're standing on right now. Whether you believe it or not, that person built the foundation you're standing on right now. Every boundary you have today exists because what happened when you didn't have one. The lesson came from somewhere. It came from her. Living content era 2 is for the person who's already on the journey and is ready to go even deeper. It's for the deeply reflective human who knows that the gap between external success and internal alignment is real and is no longer willing to paper over it. It's for the woman who holds a lot in her home, in her career, in her community, and is starting to ask harder questions about who is she beneath everything she carries. It's for anyone who is excellent in every room and quietly unsettled on the drive home. It's for anyone who has done enough living to know that who you are in the inside shapes everything that happens on the outside, and who wants to talk about it honestly, without performance and without pretending. Now we are going to move into a deeper healing phase of this conversation, and it starts with a separation I think is essential. Separating your inherent worth from your history. Here's what I mean. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us absorbed a formula. It usually isn't spoken directly, but it operates in the background like a piece of software running underneath everything else. The formula or equation goes something like this. My ability to protect myself is a reflection of how much I am worth. If I could set a boundary, I was strong, valuable, respectable. If I couldn't, I was weak, less than, someone who allowed themselves to be treated poorly, and therefore, in some unspoken way, deserved it. I want you to hear how distorted that equation actually is. Your worth was never supposed to be a variable that moves depending on your skill level at self-protecting in any given moment. Worth isn't a performance metric. It isn't something you earn through the successful execution of a boundary. It exists whether you spoke up in the meeting or didn't. It exists whether you left the relationship at year 1 or year 7. It exists independent of your history of being able to speak for yourself, of advocacy, self-defense, or assertiveness. This might be one of the more radical reframes in this whole episode. So let me say it plainly. Your capacity to advocate for yourself is a skill. Skills are built over time through practice, exposure, modeling, and sometimes through the very pain of not having them yet, of not having them at all and still building towards. Your worth is not a skill. It doesn't need to be built. It was never absent to begin with. You didn't lose worth in the moments you failed to set a boundary. You simply hadn't yet built the skill that would have let that worth show up more visibly in that specific moment. This is the transition into real healing, because as long as your worth and your history of self-advocacy remained tangled together, every memory of boundary you didn't set becomes evidence against your own value as a person. And that's an unbearable way to carry through an entire life. Untangle them, and something remarkable happens. If you untangle them, something remarkable happens. You can look back at even your most silent, most compliant, most boundaryless seasons without your sense of self-worth taking a single hit. I want to offer you an image here, something to hold on to. Picture your worth as the ground beneath your house and your boundary setting ability as the house itself. If the house is unfinished, still under construction, missing walls in places, that says nothing about the quality or stability of the ground it's built on. The ground was always solid. The house is simply still being built. You are the ground. Your boundaries are the house. Stop confusing an unfinished house for unstable ground. I think this is going to be uncomfortable for some of you, in the most useful way though. We tend to believe that our current stronger self, the one who has boundaries now, who can say no now, who has done the therapy, the reading, the inner work, is somehow more worthy of the respect than the version of us who stayed quiet. We treat our present self like the real us. Yeah, this is the real me, the one who finally earned her place at the table. And we treat our past selves like something to fold away, who snuck in and doesn't quite belong at our table. Why does the version of you with more tools deserves more respect than the version of you with fewer tools but more raw survival instinct? Consider what your younger self actually accomplished. She got through the situation. She stayed regulated enough, or at least functional enough, to keep building a life even while carrying something that hadn't been named or processed yet. That is not weaknesses. That is one of the most demanding forms of labor a person can do. Surviving something without yet having the language or tools is exhausting. It's tiring because the mental load that goes on in your head and the mental fight is a lot. Respect, if we are honest about what it actually means, shouldn't be reserved only for the version of yourself who has arrived somewhere. If that's how we define it, respect becomes conditional. Something we give out only to our most polished, most capable, most healed self, while withholding it from every earlier chapter for ourselves. That's not respect. That's a hierarchy, and it's one we've built without even noticing. But I want you to pay attention to that. I want to offer a different standard. What if respect were owed based on the effort under the conditions available, rather than outcomes achieved with more resources? Under that standard, your younger self, doing her absolute best with that little she had, deserves at minimum the same respect as a version of you doing her best today with considerably more than what they had, right? Possibly even more respect, if we are honestly speaking, given how much harder the conditions were that they've had to endure and still get you to where you are. This is the challenge I want to leave with you in this segment. Stop ranking yourselves. Stop treating your history as a lesser draft of the finished product you are now. Every version of you was the finished product for that moment in time, doing exactly what needed to be done to get where you are, to get you here. There's a specific kind of liberation that comes when you stop using your own past as evidence against yourself. I want to spend some time here because I think this is where a lot of actual freedom in this work lives. So many of us have built an internal case file. Somewhere at the back of our minds, we've been collecting evidence. Every time we didn't speak up, every relationship where we let too much slide, every workplace where we absorbed disrespect without pushing back. And we've used that file to build a case against ourselves. The verdict of that case is usually something like this. It either tells you, I am weak, I'm easy to walk over. People sense that about me and they take advantage of that, right? Here's what I want you to notice about that case file. It was built entirely out of context-free evidence. It never accounts for what tools were not available at the time. It never accounts for the fact that speaking up in some situations carried real risk, economic, physical, relational, and that staying quiet was often the most intelligent, self-preserving option available given everything you knew at the time, right? I'm hoping that this is making sense to you as you listen along. When you finally see the case file for what it is, an unfair prosecution using evidence stripped all of context. Evidence that has no context at all. You get to do something enormously freeing. You get to close the case permanently. And I hope, really, truly, I hope permanently. Not because the past didn't happen, but because the verdict was never fair to begin with. The verdict was never fair to begin with. I want you to really consider what it's cost you to keep that case open. Every time you've hesitated to trust your own judgment, because look what happened last time. Every time you've assumed the worst about your ability to protect yourself in a situation because of a pattern from years ago that you never fully re-examined, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It doesn't just describe your past, it starts shaping your future. Liberation happens the moment you take that belief apart and see it for what it is. Not a character trait, but an old adaptation that made sense once and doesn't need to keep operating anymore. You are not easy to walk over. If I can say so, you are not easy to walk over. You were someone whose nervous system had learned, likely very early, that stillness and agreeableness were the safest available response to a given threat. That's not a flaw in your character. That's a strategy your body built to keep you alive. And strategies can be adapted, can be updated. They are not permanent identities. This is the moment I want you to actually feel. Right now, if you can. The case is closed. You are not on trial anymore. You get to set that file down. Okay? All right. So let's bridge one more gap here, because I think it deepens everything we've just talked about. The strength you have today, the ability to say no, to walk away, to hold a line, to recognize disrespect the moment it enters the room. That didn't arrive out of nowhere. It wasn't handed to you at some point in adulthood as a reward for good behavior. It was built directly and specifically out of the very seasons of silence that you've been holding against yourself. Think about it honestly. The reason you know what a reflex looks like today is because you once didn't know, and you lived through what happens when you miss one. The reason you can recognize manipulation in a conversation today is because you once sat inside a manipulative conversation without the language to name it, right? The reason you know is clearer and quicker today than it was 5 years or 10 years ago is because your body remembers what it cost you the time you didn't say it. This means your past silence isn't separate from your current strength. It is the raw material your current strength was built from. There is no version of the boundary setting you today that exists without the boundaryless you years ago. She is not the opposite of your strength today. She is actually its origin point. I think this reframe matters because it changes the emotional posture we take towards our history. Instead of looking back with a flinch or an urge to minimize or hide those chapters, we get to look back with something closer to gratitude, right? Not because the pain itself was good. It wasn't at all. And I'm not asking you to pretend it was. But because the pain became information, and the information became skill, and the skill became the strength you are standing in today. So next time you catch yourself using your history as evidence of weakness, I want you to try a small internal correction. So instead of, I was so weak back then, try, that's where I learned this. So instead of, I can't believe I let that happen, try, that experience is part of the reason I don't let it happen anymore. You're not erasing what happened. You're simply putting it in its rightful place. Not as a mark against you, but as part of the architecture that built the person capable of reading this moment differently now. I want to offer you something concrete to take with you, a practice I'd like to call internal reconciliation. This is the heart of today's episode, so if you take away nothing else, take this. Internal reconciliation is the deliberate act of thanking your younger self for surviving in the only way they knew how. instead of continuing to blame them for not surviving differently. Here's how I want you to approach it. Find a quiet moment. That may not be right now, while you're driving or making dinner or moving through your day, and that's completely fine. Come back to this when you have a few unhurried minutes, right? When you do, I want you to picture a specific version of yourself, not a vague general younger me, but someone specific, a particular age, a particular season in their lives, in your life, maybe even a particular room you were in. See her clearly. Notice what she was carrying. Notice what she didn't yet have access to. Not the tools, not the language, not the safety to use either. And then instead of the old script, the one where you list everything she should have done differently, offer her a different sentence. Something like this. Thank you for staying quiet when speaking would have cost you more than you had to give. Thank you for enduring what you didn't yet have words for. Thank you for getting us both here to this moment where I finally have what you didn't. I'm not angry at you anymore. I see what you did, what you survived, and that was enough. How does that sound? I want you to notice the shift in that language. We are not saying it's okay that this happened in a way that minimizes real harm, right? We are saying it's okay that you responded the way you did, given what you have. That distinction matters enormously. This practice is not about excusing whoever crossed the line. It is entirely, exclusively about releasing the self-directed blame that's been quietly living inside you since then. You can do this practice once as a single meaningful conversation with your own history, or you can return to it as an ongoing rhythm. A few minutes whenever your old memory resurfaces, uninvited, whenever the familiar flinch of shame shows up in your chest, instead of following the flinch into the spiral we spoke about earlier of self-blame, meet it with this instead. Thank you for surviving the only way you knew how. Say it as many times as it takes for your nervous system to actually believe it. Because I promise you, the first time you say it, some parts of you probably won't believe it at the first time. That's fine. Say it again next week. And then the week after that. This is not a one-time fix. It's a relationship you're rebuilding with yourself. And relationships as we know it, they fundamentally take time. Relationships take repetition to heal, right? And so you should take all the time you need. So before we close, I want to leave you with a few prompts, as I normally do. And you can come back to them whenever you have the capacity to, whenever you have the space and time to sit down with yourself and come back to them. Number 1, think of a specific moment you've been holding against your younger self. A time you stayed quiet when you wish you'd spoken. Write it down as if you were describing it to someone who loves you, not someone who's judging you. I'm talking about someone who loves you. What did she actually have access to in that moment, emotionally, practically, safety-wise? And what didn't she have? Number 2, write a direct apology to that version of you using the framework from today's episode. Name the moment, release the blame from the wrong place, and reassign what it means about you. Let it be specific. Let it be tender, please. Let it be gentle. Number 3, where in your life today is your no still hesitant? Where in your life is your no still hesitant? Over-explained or delayed? Now trace that hesitation backwards. What old case file might still be open underneath it? What would it look like to close that case file for good? I hope these help. Sit with your pen a little longer if you're doing it right now. Then it feels comfortable. That's usually where the real answer is waiting. As we bring this one home, I want to leave you with something clearer. something you can carry out of this episode and into the rest of your week. Releasing the shame of your past silence is not a side effect of learning to set boundaries today. It is the final, necessary step in it. You cannot fully, confidently say no in the present while some part of you is still on trial. Every time you couldn't say it in the past, every unresolved case of self-blame is a small tax on your present day's confidence. It shows up as hesitation. It shows up as an over-explaining yourself when a simple no would do. It shows up as the flicker of doubt right before you assert something you have every right to assert. Close that case. Welcome your younger self home. Apologize to her, specifically and on purpose, for the blame you've been placing on her instead of where it truly belonged. Stop ranking her beneath the version of you that exists today. Recognize that her silence built the very strength you're standing on right now. And when you are ready, sit with her and say thank you instead of I'm sorry, you didn't do better. This is the homecoming, not a single moment of forgiveness, but a repeated practice of choosing to bring every version of yourself back into the same room instead of leaving pieces of your own history exiled outside of the door. You're allowed to say no today, fully with your whole chest, without apology, without over-explaining yourself, because the woman who once couldn't already paid the price of learning how. Let her rest now. Let her know it worked. Let her know you made it, and that from here, you'll carry the two of you forward together. I told you today would be a long episode, but before you go, let's do our normal tradition. Let's carry these out with us. Say them with me out loud if you can. I forgive myself for the boundaries I didn't know how to set. My past silence was not a choice. It was survival, and survival is enough. I release the shame I've carried for a younger version of me who was only doing her best. My strength today was built by the very seasons I used to be ashamed of. I am allowed to say no, fully and without explanation. I welcome every version of myself home. I hope that helps you. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this episode moved something in you, sit with it before you rush back into your day. Let it settle. And if you feel called to, please share it with someone else who this might actually help. Share where it lands with you, with me as well. You know where to find me. Until next time, this is Living Content. Go gently with yourself. Do take care of yourself. Okay? Alrighty. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate you for being here. Please remember to share your love openly here by subscribing, sharing these episodes, and also just adding your feedback on the reviews. So this podcast can also be easily found by those in similar journeys and needing the message here. I would love to hear how the podcast is helping you. So do share that too with me, and be sure to check the podcast out on Instagram. Keep well. Chat to you soon.